Okay, so aloha everyone, and welcome to our what class is this? Oh, Slaki Ensemble. This is our Slaki Ensemble class. Today we're very grateful to have two people who have become my dear friends in music, both Mapuana and Kihei De SIlva. Both of them are people who I totally look up to, honor, respect, and think highly of, hold in high regard. We're very grateful that we have them here. And as many of you know, they are literally, when you talk about two birds with one stone, they are literally the perfect people to invite to this particular class because we are learning in our Slacky class both Hanohano Wailea as well as Lililehua. And both of them are connected to these mele in different ways. But I think in Hawaiian music, we always want to get as close to the source as possible. Yeah, that's our goal when we are looking at mele. We want to get as close to the source as possible. Once again, I just wanted to, for those of you that didn't receive my email this morning, I thank you all for being here today. But just a real quick reminder on kind of a protocol is within your questions. We don't ask about kauna. Yeah, the composer will share what they want to share. We can ask about duplicate meaning because that's something that we all, if you have a little background in Olelo, we can discuss duplicate meanings, but kauna is dealing with the who's and the things that are specific and personal to the composer. So those are things we don't typically mahaoi. Yeah, we don't typically ask questions about, oh, who is this for? If the composer or any of them feel like they want to share that, then they will do so. But yeah, so that's just our quick reminder. And now we can get uh, into our guest presentation. So we're so grateful to have them. As mentioned, you guys know Uncle Kihei De SIlva is the composer of the song that we're learning. So we'll start with you with Hanohano Wailea. And, truthfully, I've shared with Uncle Kihei when I was doing my dissertation that, like, the more I looked at this song, the more I blew my mind. And I'm like, what? To me, there's compositions where, and this is a particular song where I use this song as an example often of how you can say so much in two lines, in one verse. Like there's so much information in every verse. And in Haku Mele, that's what we do, right? A well-crafted mele, we talked about that, is going to have a lot of information and it won't be particularly just translatable into English to give a perfect meaning of what is intended. So first, we'll start with that. And once again, you guys can feel free to start putting questions in the chat. But Uncle Kie, uh, what drove you to, well, first of all, and I know because I've studied the song, I know some of it, but like I said, Nanai Kikumu, we're going to get as close to the source as possible. So what drove you to write Hanohano Wailea in the first place?
Oh, there's a lot of strands to why it got written. The most, I guess, not obvious, but the most immediate at the time was that well, we live in Lenikai, Ka'ohao, about a block and a little bit from the beach, from the middle of Ka'ohao, where there is still beach today. And this was after cleaning yard. I went down to cool off, and oh, there was a self-professed keiki oka'aina standing there with this little cup of I don't know what, a drink of some kind in a red plastic cup with his friends, or I don't know who they were, but people gathered around him, and I had to kind of maneuver around them, and then I heard him giving a tour of our home, and he was pointing out everything that that had been given a name that wasn't the old name. So he was pointing out Namohulua, and he was calling them the Twin Islands, and then he goes on to explain that that's one hump and that's two hump, and we also call them the Mokes. And by then I'm already getting heated. And then he goes down to Wailea Point, and that's Smith's Point, because some millionaire named Smith built a mansion. And then he goes around, points out Kaiva Ridge, which is the Pillbox Ridge, and he goes to Puhalo, which is now Mid-Pacific Ridge, and Lanakai Point, where the monument is. And by that time, I was not cooled off at all, which was my intention. I was really hot under the collar. I didn't have a collar on, but I was like angry. So I came home, and I kind of, by the time I got home, I already knew what I was going to write. I was going to name the names of where we live, the names that I understood that were being forgotten, and that in the face of that kind of rewriting, I don't know, how do we have a chance to remember? How do we have any defense against this? So I wrote a simple, hopefully, mele. I didn't want to just pile on all the place names and go on and on like I can. So I just limited it to Punawai, to Kaiva Ridge, to Ka'ohao, to and I had a lot. That's the incentive for the song, but the deeper kind of influences. I'm a lover of Hawaiian music, and that's in the old days when you could turn on KCCN and hear nothing but beautiful Hawaiian music all day long. The radio was never off in our house, right. And that's where I learned all of these songs. And then when our friendship grew with Kawai Kakit, we would travel with him and sit with him and do everything. He'd sing all these great songs, and among them were the Hanohano songs. Hanohano Waiehu in particular, Hanohano Olinda as well. And so I had this kind of back of my head, not really conscious, pickle about how to go about this. And then the ka'uike that shows up in these and other songs, I really love, because ka'uike is, in my opinion, right? It's not, you guys may not think this at all. You may be explaining this as Smith Point, but in my eyes, ka'uike, this place is Hanohano. It's glorious. It's dignified. It has this beautiful past. So that Hanohano tradition from that kind of 1950s, 60s Hawaiian compositions by great writers, authors, and songwriters. And then my oldest daughter, Kahikina, was about 7 or 8 at the time. This was in 84. And she was going to Lanakai Elementary School, and they were singing the Lanakai school song, which is, I can't even, old Lanikai, something rhyming with I and my and blue sky, and it just, my daughter is learning to sing this with all those other kids, and they're in the middle of this very rich, historically Hawaiian, legendary everything past, and they're talking about stuff that are just postcard stuff. So those were, last thing, mele makaikai. I really love the old, not real old, maybe late 19th century chant tradition, where you travel from place to place to place. You makaikai, you visit by and in those mele, you have, you name the place, and then you describe an attribute, and you name the next place and you describe an attribute, and the next place and you describe an attribute. So all of those things kind of ended up in my putting together that song really fast. And that's, I would say, in all my years and efforts at songwriting, very unusual, because I normally take forever to write a song. And it just is, it involves enormous amount of research, because I'm not fluent in Hawaiian. I'm always double checking to see that I'm using my language properly, that there's precedent in the phrases that I choose and the descriptions that I choose. And I'm always very nervous about whether, this one was, I always envy Manu Boyd, because he can sit down at a picnic and write a beautiful song like Nani Ola'a on a napkin or the back of a paper plate, and then he wins a Nahoku Hanohano with a, it just, how the heck does he do that? This was the closest that I've ever gotten to that kind of stuff. And there's, because we live here, because my wife, Mapu, has lived here since she was 2 years old, so that's like 71 years now, we're para to this place. And we see the changes all around us, and sometimes we feel like the only Hawaiians in all of Lanikai. And so our a lot of our effort is to cast a net that holds down the places that we know and love and don't want to lose. So that's a long answer, but that's like all of the things that I can think of that contributed to that. And then of course,
I think, go ahead.
Go ahead.
No, and I think that I think with any songwriting, there's always multiple reasons, like you said, preserve it, and for your kids. Because of that, the impetus was this person saying the Mokes and Smith's Point and all those. So there's always a lot of reasons why I think people write songs. But the cool thing about this particular song too that I think about is, one of the projects that Indigenous people are always trying to do is to reclaim our names. And that's Indigenous people around the world, not just Native. It's not uniquely Native Hawaiian. It's the reclamation of names, because the names of the place carry with them the history, not only the histories and the worldviews of the past, but it also naming the world. When we are allowed to name our surroundings, name our world, we also name our realities, and the space in which we live. And like you said, Hawaiian music is often used to honor people, places, winds, rains, circumstances. And we see the displacement of our names, not only in Wailea, but we see it everywhere, from Sunset Beach, Paumalu, to Tantless, Pu'u'ohia, Chinaman's Hat, Mokoli'i.
Islands.
So yeah, exactly. Manana. So I think there's an effort to reclaim these names, but I think your struggle that you thought of is exactly what you said. I really connected to that when you said, how do we make a dent in this? And I think that is one of the roles where Mele has the ability, because when we look at the history of Mele, and this is for my students, we know that occupiers, colonizers, outside dominant society would use Mele, would use music as a way to introduce new things. They would use it as a way to breed nationalism, patriotism. And so with that in mind, as Native people, we also acknowledge that we too can use music. We went from himeni to, hey, you know what? We can write our own songs, and we can actually use our poetry, and they won't have a clue what we're singing about if we don't want them to. So it's really interesting that we can use mele in this way. And the English word that I love is mele helps to inculcate. Yeah? When I think of inculcate, I think of the Hawaiian term that I think of is haku'iku'i, yeah, which in the song Leinani, yeah, in the second verse, ko aloha kaua e hi'ipoi nei haku'iku'i e haiku umana'o. When I think of haku'iku'i, it's, it's like inculcate. It's this, and that was a style of playing slaki. Haku'iku'i is where they would tap. Yeah. So I always think I use that musical definition and I hear haku'iku'i e haiku. It's like, oh, it just gets in my head. Yeah, it keeps tapping and it's causing me this pain every time I think of it. So I think this haku'iku'i with mele, that inculcation, to continue to hear, oh, Wailea, punawai, ka'iva, ka'ohao. When we hear that, I think it helps us solidify those names. So I'm going to look in the chat. I saw a couple questions. One question was, I think we'll push that question till more towards the end. Makalena asks about the Hala Grove. She says, was there a grove name for the Hala in Ka'ohao? Makalena she does Lauhala weaving. And so she's just curious. She said, as a Lauhala weaver, just love when Hala is added to mele. Was there a grove name for the Hala in Ka'ohao? Do you know if there was a grove name for the Hala?
I don't know the name, but the old stories referenced, for example, in Sites of Oahu, described Punawai Stream coming down off of the ridge and winding its way through Ka'ohao and going out to the ocean, and it wound, it meandered through a Lauhala Grove, and that, you think, I forget who I was reading, but somebody was saying, when you do oral stuff, nothing is insignificant. Put every last thing down. And here, this reference to the Hala Grove is still around because somebody put it down when Kupuna explained it. And then here I am, centuries later, looking at it and going, yeah, there was a Hala Grove there. There was an Uluhala there. And the neat thing is, if you look in the legend of Kamahihei, Hawaiian newspaper, 19, I don't know what, turn of the century, there's a Hala Grove described there. And that's where the women did their work while the men engaged in martial practice of some kind. So corroboration, little bits and pieces still here and there. And then the personal part of that is that, oh gosh, this is like Kamuela says, it's like little insignificant seeming things grow into my great-grandfather, a resident of Hanohano on Hawaii Island, was known for his lei hala, which he made every morning when the puhala in his yard was blooming. And that, according to my mom's story, it was like that was the puhala in the area. That was his, and his lei was the lei hala. And that is kind of our family lei, much to the consternation of people who are bothered by hala and the hala passing death significance of it. But in our family tradition, no, hala is fresh start, new beginning, optimism as you look forward to things and leave other things behind. And then our yard is the new ulu hala in Ka'ohao. We have, I'm looking out at it now, maybe 8 or 9 puhala, male and female, leaves, ahui hala, and that's where we, my younger daughter, Kapolai, does all of the lei hala making. She's a student of Uncle Roy Benham. She knows how to do the kukuna cuts, really awesome. Anyway, so the uluhala in the song has much behind it. It resonates depending on, how deep into like the family and what I'm thinking about, how deep that goes. Although I
And
can't really say that when I wrote it, I was conscious of that. A lot of things that come out, I discover later when I look back at what I've written, and this is probably true of that.
right, and you know what I think that the beautiful thing about that is sometimes we think everything has to be intentional. But to think that everything has to be intentional, even lyrically, is to deny inspiration from somewhere else. You know, yeah, that's from Kupuna. So, so sometimes in Mele Hawaii, it's a beautiful thing. Sometimes you write something and it's not till later on when you really look at it and you go, wow, like I didn't even realize all of this extra meaning could have been in there. And it's also the beautiful thing. And it's funny because me and Kihei, I feel like we are somewhat kindred in the sense that we love to look at Mele and, you know, like try to find everything we can. I've read a bunch of his stuff from Maki Ailana to, Hanohano Wailea. And, I think that that's the beautiful thing about Hawaiian music is because everything is not so overt and so blatant, like straightforward, that it allows, like a piece of art, it allows the listener, depending on their context, their situation, their life experiences, to hear different things that they may need to hear, and to provide inspiration for that. Do you find do you agree with that? Yeah, I think so.
That's all about me. I mean, I get criticized sometimes for, looking too deep or coming up with all kind of stuff, but I always try to qualify that by saying this is just, my perspective. I don't try to impose it on the hakumele. These are just the things that resonate with me, and
Yeah,
the genius of some of those older writers is just how incredibly deep you can go, and still there's more.
right. And to me, that's the part that when I look at Mele in that fashion, that I know you do too, it's it's not to me about Mahaoi. It's about acknowledging their genius. It's about really looking and being like, what? How did you do that? And truthfully, Hanohano Wailea, when I was writing my dissertation, there were times where I text you guys, I'm like, I can't believe it. I'm like, oh my gosh. I'm like, how did you say so much? I shared with them in a text maybe over a year ago when I was writing. Just the Punavai verse, that verse, I wrote a whole page on 2 lines, in my dissertation. Just those two, Punavai ili ili nehe ike kai, awana kawai olu ika uluhala. You know, just those 2 lines. I'm like, how is there so much in that verse? Can we actually, what I'm thinking to do is, can we kind of just go through verse by verse in a systematic way rather than kind of jumping back and forth? Um, and if you just want to explain a little bit about, so for example, Wailea, the waters of Lea, and who is Lea, some
Sure.
of the historical things that you might be willing to. So we'll go verse by verse if that's okay. Does that work for you?
Yeah.
Okay, sweet.
Okay. First verse, Hanohano Wailea. Wailea, the guardian goddess of fishermen canoe fleets. And if you dig around a little more, also connected to hula as well, as one of the lesser but still recognized. I like to call them guardians
Yeah.
of dance, and that's the point on this side. Often confused with Wailea, but it's not Lea water; it's Lea's water. And Wailea, the point, reaches out, juts out, swims out into the ocean. So that's my anchor point for the song. We're going to go Hawaiians' thinking begins in the east. Wailea is to our east, and then we come around this way.
And that was one of the questions too, which we'll get to. Go ahead.
In a half circle. It's interesting because I wrote half the song. I didn't want it, like I said, I didn't want a long song, so I just wrote 4 verses, and then 22 years later, I went all the way around, went out into the ocean, did the Mopulua, did a Lala Point, Mopulua, came back and finished the thing. So the Napalapalai version is the long full circle version. Anyway,
that one is delayed.
So Nawahine Kia Iaui Kekai, she's our guardian spirit or guardian woman, reaching out into the ocean, embracing the canoe fleets of the past, embracing the
now
holding everything.
I don't remember which that maybe holding, that's where I'm thinking of. But isn't the story of Ka'ohao related to some, I can't remember, I mean, off the top of my head, but wasn't there a canoe or a binding of something? Right?
In the Mo'olelo of Lono Ika Makahiki, as told by Fornander, Lono Ika Makahiki, Hawaii Island chief, arrives here and is followed shortly after by his one of his kahu, whose name is Hauna. There's a whole great thing about Hauna too, but and he's from Hanohano, so that's even more like, okay, this is Ohana. But Lono Ika Makahiki is engaged with Kakuhiava in a betting bet. They bet everything, kingdoms, lands, everything. And one of the bets that
are you saying we were gambling before we loved Vegas? Before Vegas, that's why we're so natural at Vegas.
Gamblers like crazy. So Lono Ika Makahiki says that his kahu is going to arrive, should be here very shortly, if not already here. And he bets that Kakuhiava and all of his men cannot find him. So Hauna, knowing this, I don't know, that story doesn't explain that, but he comes ashore on a beach, which ends up being named Ka'ohao. His canoe is loaded with feather goods, I guess capes and lei, for Lono Ika Makahiki. And he hides it, and then he comes ashore to near Alala Point, and he sees 2 women playing konane, and he figures the smartest thing to do to hide is to be right out in the open, where he wouldn't be looked for because it's too obvious. So he convinces the women to join up, to take one side, and he takes the other, and he says, let's engage in this game. And the wagering all over the place is that if he beats them, they will be his, and if they beat him, then he will be theirs. And he manipulates the game so that it takes a long time. And the story describes the runners of Kakuhiava passing by, running everywhere, looking for the kahu of Lono Ika Makahiki, and he can't be found anywhere. So the bet is concluded. Lono Ika Makahiki wins, Kakuhiava loses yet again. And then because as the game ends, Hauna beats the 2 women. And they are dejected, of course, because they've given themselves over to him. So he ties their wrists, and Ka'ohao is the tying, and he leads them away. And they think that the life that they knew was now gone. He takes them to his canoe, and then he unties them, and he says, "You don't know how much you've helped me, but in reward, I'm giving you all this feather wealth." And then as Fornander concludes the story, the name of that place until this very day is Ka'ohao, which commemorates the tying up of the 2 women, the binding of them. And it's just a cool story because it ends up being a good kind of binding. It ends up being a positive kind of ending to what you think is going to be. I don't know what this, what.
See, and I thought that was so cool because the first verse of the song, even though it's just a reference, Wailea is the canoe guardian, and so I felt in reading it, and I don't know if this is intentional, but I felt in reading, it's like, oh man, like, even though you're talking about Wailea, you're totally linking me to Ka'ohao because of that story with, so it's like Ka'ohao and Wailea are connected right in the first verse, because of that story with the canoe and the feathers and that story. So, I mean, that's another one. I'm like, oh my gosh, so much info. How do you do it?
I don't know. I don't know. Some of that was intentional, and some of it I discover later on. So
Yeah,
I'm reading
exactly.
a longer version of Lonoika Makahiki, not the Fornander version, but a Nupepa version. And Wailea is the place of the Konane, the famous Hale Konane of the time. And this is where all of the best Konane players gather to compete. So
See,
again, it's like, I didn't know that, but
that's the Hi'ikua.
there's somebody sitting
Yeah.
over there is telling me, you may not know this, but
Yeah,
it's
but you
happening.
will.
You will if you have to research your own song to know what you're
Yeah.
talking about. That's kind of
No, but you know what? To me, it's absolutely a sign of when you find those nuggets, it's like, wow, that inspiration was there. You get to acknowledge and say, hey, mahalo for that one, for that being there. Okay, so that's the first verse. Second verse, we go to Punavai. You want to
okay.
talk a little bit about
Yeah, I do.
Punavai?
There's some intentional parts in this. In the chant no luna ikahalekai no kama'aleva, there's a line Kea au ili ili nehe ikekai. And it's a compressed language. Yeah, it's not a long grammatical sentence. It's bam, place, pebbles, nehe kai, right? And I just love that compaction of language. And because there's precedent for it, then I get to do it. See, I'm not like, what is this guy? He doesn't know his Hawaiian. I know my Mele, so yeah, I kind of know my Hawaiian. And then, Punawai stream, in old accounts, like I said, flowed down, meandered through the Hollow Grove out into the ocean, and at the ocean, ili ili all over the place. So the ili ili clattered and rattled as the fresh water flowed over them and into the ocean. And I read this little account of some building of a house down where Punawai is now. And guess what they found when they were excavating the foundation? Ili ili all over the place. So that reference is actual, not made up. And the sad thing with Punawai is that it got dug out and turned into a drainage ditch. So if you drive down to the end of Ka'ohao now, you will pass over a concrete box drainage ditch that runs right through the subdivision out into the ocean. It doesn't meander at all. It just goes boom, flushing all that stuff right out into the ocean. No ili ili there anymore. But
So that is not, just to be clear, that is not the bridge, right? That is not Punavai.
no, that's that's very much toward the Wailea end, the far Waimanalo end of Ka'ohao, and it's maybe the last or next to the last street before it loops back.
Okay. Yeah.
So that the pain of that and the need to give it its name back and the need to celebrate it was really important to me, which is why it comes up in this verse. As we're working our way back from Wailea, the first thing of importance that I want to remember is not that ditch, but that it was a stream, that it meandered, that there was a hollow grove there, that the ili ili sang as the water passed over. And then the last thing is when we named our house is Home Punavai, in tribute to that place and to the idea that the ili ili, the singing ili ili, are our students and our dancers, and they are like the old pebbles gathered here clattering in the tide. So that's how that whole thing came together, and I kind of surprised myself.
No, and
that way back 40 years ago. I don't know.
yeah, and that is and I also love that, you mentioned earlier today that now you have what, 8 or 9
Yeah.
hala trees in your yard. So even the ulu hala and your
It's here.
home being
Yeah.
home punavai,
Yeah.
and the hula dancers are there. Now the part that I picked up on, and like I said, probably unintentional even at the time, but I loved even the references of ili ili and awana within within your lyrics, because you had mentioned in your write-up, as well as I think in conversations, or maybe in Cleveland when I heard you talking about it, how they dance there at Punavai, and I couldn't help but think, in my mind immediately when I hear ili ili, I think of more traditional hula, and then awana, and what I hear in that, and this is, like I said, this could be another one where you say, well, wow, mahalo for that, is, I hear this continuation between the generations from kahiko to now to awana, and it's all in one place there at Punavai, from ili ili to awana. And so when I read it, and that's kind of what I wrote about in my dissertation, how the listener can hear, even when in reading lyrics, you can pull out things and go, whoa, like maybe they didn't even know at the time, but those two references can reference this intergenerational link between, the things before, and the things hi'ikua and hi'ialo, So very interesting. Okay. Let's go to halakau.
Uluhala halakau. I like to write link terminals that kind of keep me on some sort of track. So, the first verse kai, the next verse vai, then the second verse hala, then the third verse halakau. Sometimes that takes me in directions that I'm not anticipating. Sometimes I know where I'm going, but if it ends in a word, and I'm trying to think of a word that complements it, then sometimes that word ends up telling me what I'm going to write for that next verse, or there's like an interplay of where I want to go and where this word is telling me to go. This one is, we're working our way back, Wailea Punavai, now up to Kaiva. And then this is the personal family part in the legend of Kaiva, which is only like explained in English. I have yet to find the Hawaiian newspaper version, but from what we know, the goddess Kaiva resided on the ridge right above us, which was given the name. And Kaiva was much loved by Ahiki, and Ahiki is of the 3 Olomana peaks, Ahiki is the one closest to Waimanalo. And according to the story, Ahiki was so in love with Kaiva that he pulled himself away from the other 2 mountain peaks in order to be closer. So if you stand up on Kaiva Ridge and you look at the Olomana peaks, you see Kaiva separating from the other 2 and moving in the Kaiva direction. And then this is where the story that I was consciously working on was when how do you say this? When I was first very interested in Leslie Mapuana de SIlva back in, it's a long time ago, 8th grade, 9th grade, 8th grade. She's saying 8th grade. We lived in Maunawili, my family, right beneath the Olomana Peaks on the Maunawili side. And I was drawn here to her, which is where married here, ended up here. This is now our place. So Ahiki definitely moved to Kaiva. So that's my little, this has a geographic significance, but as is often the case, the geography represents individuals. And so this is our little love story hidden away in the relationship between those two peaks across the plain of Kailua.
And I love that reference. That that part of the story is the way that you were able to work in both the historical and your guys' own personal stories is like, what? So absolutely, that's another one of my favorite parts of the song. So now we'll go to the fourth verse, which is the one we're learning, ho'olono, which is, the last verse that was in the original.
Short version, yeah.
Yeah.
So ho'olono to kualono to ho'olono. I wanted more, but I remember this is for the kids. This is for the kids. I don't want to just make it so hard that they'll never remember the song or, the name. So let's name the place. We went there. Now we're going to go, okay, this is it. So I put the ears, I guess, on Ka'ohao. It hears this mele of my beautiful land spread out below. So if you're on Ka'iva, you're up there on the pillboxes. If you're up on Ka'iva Ridge looking down, you see why the ridge is named Ka'iva, because it does this. It's another ohau. It's another embrace. It's another holding everything in place. So I'm trying to say that Ka'ohao, Ka'iva, it does me the honor of listening to what I am saying. And what I am saying is, this is our Ainanani. A vaihone. Vaiho is to be spread out. And often it's used like it's obvious, or it ought to be obvious. It's vaiho right there for you to see. But again, that's the kauna of it, or the sarcasm of it, because it's, how come it's not in ikau ike? It ought to be everybody's ike. It ought not be. It ought to be obvious, but it's not obvious to most people who live here, or hike the ridge here, or go to the beach here, or stand with their red plastic cups and explain blah 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 to their friends. So that was my way of bringing the whole thing to a close in a way that it could be remembered. Then what happened? Gave it to Mo. Well, first it was, Mopu danced it as a hula, noho, first with kala'au, then with ili, because of the ili. Then I gave it to Mo because we wanted to do it for Mary Monarch. And then Mo wrote the music that we're familiar with today, but he was recording his first album at the time, just before Mary Monarch was going to be released. So he didn't want everybody to know the song the way that he, intended it for us. So he wrote it what he called his hi'ilave style. So, if you listen to Mo's recording, it's more, Gabby hi'ilave, not the, the big luscious falsetto. Anyway, then, yeah,
that one. That's the one, yeah.
with the ukulele basically picking slack key. Yeah.
Right.
So that was his way to hide it from everybody getting an advance, listen to it before we danced it. So when we sang it at Mary Monarch, he sang it the right way. And what's been funny over the years is plenty of people go, how come Mo ruined your song? What happened? How come he sings it that way? Because they're used to, Kihei recorded it afterwards, the way that Mo actually wrote it. And then Napalapale did it with the lush Johnny Lamho kind of thing too. But or they say, or else they say, why did Kihei change the tune? So it's a kind of an interesting game that Mo and we were playing.
Yeah, and because you said that, and I talked to you a number of times, you do lyrics, right? That's what
Uh-huh,
you said.
uh-huh.
You do lyrics.
I don't do music.
Yeah. So you give people to make the
I give,
mele for it.
and I've had some incredible partners over the years who, especially Mo, who
Yeah.
kind of could hear what I was. When I write, I hear it, but I'm not gonna, I can't make the music. I don't know music, and I don't want to go, here's how it should sound and try to sing it. So, like Mo here, and he'd come back and he'd go, oh my God,
That was
that's
it.
better
Yeah.
than I imagined it. So that's how.
Right.
I'll tell you a quick story. I wrote, I got a hoku hanohano for a song called Lihau, which Mo wrote the music to. When I wrote it, I heard a waltz. And so I wrote it in that kind of, 3/4 listening to myself. And then I gave it to Mo, didn't tell him anything. And he took forever to get back to me. And he usually didn't take that long. And then finally he calls me up and he says, I got to talk to you. So I meet him at Kamehameha School Kikuhapi over having a hula practice. And I got to go out to the car and talk to him. I don't, what is going on? Like secret, what? And he goes, I have to apologize. All I can do with this song is make a waltz out of it. And I said, you were kidding me. Because I just gave it to him. I didn't tell him it's a waltz. So it's a waltz. And so he sings it to me and I go, man, Mo, how did you know that was what I was hearing when I wrote it? I didn't want to make you turn it into a waltz. So that was recorded on, I don't know what one, the first or the second. Anyway, we got a hoku hanohano for that. And Jerry sings it beautifully. If we can get him to do it.
Let's get him to do it.
So Mo is like amazing I had an amazing collaboration with him. Always like broke my heart that I would never have anybody like that again. But recently I'm starting to feel the same thing about a young guy named Zachary Lum.
Oh yeah. And he's got it.
There's more in store.
Well, that's fun to hear. One thing I like about the Ho'olono verse 2 is it like you said, it's almost like this call to Ka'ohao to like hear that, like. But I also love that you can almost hear. I mean, while it says one, that like Ka'ohao's listening to this song. It's also the intention they're not intention. That's not the word I'm looking for. But it can be heard that like your name Ka'ohao will be heard, and will be remembered, and we will make it plain. So almost like there could be an intentionality within the song itself. And one thing that I love is that this song became the school song, right? For Lanikai Elementary until 2017, when what happened?
The school decided to change its name. They are now Ka'ohao School. The kids, well, this started a while back before 2017 because one of the teachers, who I don't remember anymore, who has since left, knew the song and started to teach it in our classes. And pretty soon it kind of became the school song and they would sing it in public. And I thought, wow, what a neat thing. But then Lililehua Sterling, who is a graduate kumuhula now of ours, our Miss Hula 2012, and like another of our daughters, totally daughter of ours, got a job there teaching Hawaiian culture. And so she reintroduced the song. She took them up Kaiva Ridge. She built a curriculum around the idea of Ka'ohao. The kids went home to their parents and said, why are we Lanikai School? That's not a real name. That's the developer's name. And the parents bought into it. And then they came back to the school and the school board bought into it. And before we knew it, they went through all of the hoops that it took to rename the school. So now when you drive by, there's a sign up, there's this Ka'ohao School. And I remember a Facebook confrontation between my daughter and Lanikai old timer who was telling her it will never be Ka'ohao again. You are living in the past. That name is long since lost. Well, I'm sorry, buddy, but they changed the name of the school. You listen in all kinds of conversations. People will go, Ka'ohao, not Lanikai, Ka'ohao. They're always correcting. So now it's become part of the understood conversation about this place and what its name, was and what its name should be again. And there's Ka'ohao all over the place. There's a Ka'ohao t-shirt design company. There's Ka'ohao stickers that you can buy. There's, the mokulua, but in front of it, it says Ka'ohao, na mokulua. So the thing that I never expected is that the words in Malay form had the power to alter in a way that I never expected it. The reality to turn it back, to make Ka'ohao come back, put it in the mouths and the ears of our children, put it in the mouths and ears of our adults. There's no question, no problem now with people saying Ka'ohao. That's a real name for Lanikai.
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
That from just a little song that I was writing because I was angry and I wanted to make sure that my daughters had the right names, and Mapu taught it and choreographed it, and then within 30 years we have the revival of the name, and it's kind of helped to inspire other efforts to change names and to write songs. Like Manu Boyd's Hanohano Helu Moa is his trying to rename the Royal Hawaiian Shopping Center, give it its old name back. Zach Lum's Hanohano Haiku is a way for him to reintroduce the names for haiku. People are doing that now intentionally, and it started this at the beginning, I think, of that current movement to rename or name again in songs is this Hanohano Wailea, which is is staggering to me that it would have that much impact.
Yeah, absolutely. And I love the fact that, like, when you wrote the Ho'olono verse 30 years in
40, almost 40, 20,
38, 39.
38, yeah.
I was born in 1984, so I know. So
easy to remember.
Easy to remember when you wrote the song. So when you wrote it those years ago, who knew, Ho'olono Ka'ohao would be manifest and come true those years later. Where it's like, it literally, now the name is heard. And, with all my students, I've extended challenges many times, and I think I've shared with you guys, where I in the past, I've told my students, always start with Ka'ohao. That we have a tendency sometimes to start with Lanikai, and I say, always start with Ka'ohao. And then if the person doesn't know, then you say, oh, you might know it as Lanikai. So we do that. I have a bunch of students who have committed to that. Their parents have committed to it. and hopefully even the students who are here, I know that they're probably doing the same thing. But I think that this song is an excellent example of, that haku'iku'e, that inculcation, that if we sing it enough, if we say it enough, there is power in mele to restore consciousness of names of places. That through mele, we can reclaim the names. It's a tool that we have that we sing over and over. Mele can be popular. They can have a platform to share. And all of those things can help us in our struggle as Native people to reclaim names of places and things that are valuable to us. One thing that, okay, so I know our time is getting short. So before I completely open it up for general questions, I want to move to Auntie Mapu. If you can share with us some thoughts on Pua Lililehua as a student of Auntie Mikey, as someone who was around them, like I said, we will get as close to the source as we can. So if you want to share some of your thoughts on Pua Lililehua and some of your experiences even with Auntie.
Sure, happy to. I didn't take formal hula lessons until I came home from college. I started with Auntie Mikey in 1972 and just learned hula oana first. And I was just really fortunate that I was in a class where everybody was catching on really well. So we started to learn some of her classic dances, and I got to learn Pua Lililehua from her. And I remember our class was on Friday afternoons. And one day she came in this suit, this three-piece suit with her hair all fixed, flowers in her hair and a corsage. And she had this huge smile on her face. And she said, I just got married to Uncle Kay. She got married. And then she came to hula. It's so typical Auntie Mikey. And I knew from the first day I walked into class that she was the kumu that I wanted to learn from. She just had this presence about her and this really positive, loving, wonderful, knowledgeable, spiritual, exciting personality and way of teaching. And so Pua Lililehua, she told us, is a song that Uncle Kay wrote because he had his eye on Auntie Mikey for a long, long time when she was still married to Uncle Boniface. And he kept watching her and all of her escapades and just was patiently waiting for the time that he could win her over to his side. And so learning from her and listening to her stories when we dance, those of us who were with Auntie, when we dance Pua Lililehua, I know all of us just see her right in front of us as we dance, and we feel that love that she and Uncle Kay shared through all the years. So they were collaborating in the 60s, the early 60s, when the Hanohano Lake Trail was really popular, and they were playing, I forget the place they were playing, Waikiki, they had like a standing.
Maybe Halekulani.
Yeah, I think it was Halekulani.
Or House Without,
House in the outside gardens, right? In the
right. House Without a Key or whatever. Pretty much the cool thing about the K-Lake albums is they were all named where they were at. You can remember where they played.
Right. Yeah, it was Halekulani. That's what it said. Yes, Kaimana Beach.
Yeah, Kaimana Beach. That's the one. Yeah.
And so every time Tutu Kovena and Maddie Lam would write a song, they give it to Mikey to give it to Kahoano to sing and give it to Mikey to choreograph. And so they kept coming back and together. And so Auntie Mikey said Uncle Kay wanted to let Auntie Mikey know or write this song for her and let her know how much he loved her and was just waiting for the right time to capture her. And that he asked Tutu Kovena to help him with the words. So that song, on that fourth verse, Hilo Pa'aya Ke Aloha, that is that binding together of that love. So it's I have this love for you, and then glancing over there, and then I'm watching you go here, there, and everywhere, and just waiting for you to settle down so I can snare you. And that's kind of how it ended. Was Kihei, you want to add anything to that?
No, so yeah, and Uncle Kihei, feel free to unmute and add anything and anything more as well. I have to say, it's, for me, it is so different as a musician. So as I've shared with you guys, my dad was a student of Hanohano Lake, right? So that was the first songs I learned. I was a weird kid. I was at King Intermediate, 7th, 8th grade. And like my favorite group was the Hanohano Lake Trio. Everyone else was playing like All Creator Boys. And I was like, but listen to this version of Hene Hene Ko'aka, and brother is, I was like, no, but I like this one. And so it's interesting because Auntie Mapu comes from that genealogy of Auntie Mikey, and my musical genealogy, I point towards Hanohano Lake from my dad, and he was a student of Hanohano Lake. And so as a musician, it's so, for me, it's almost painfully obvious when Auntie Mapu dances it, when Uluwehi, when Robert dances it.
Auntie Vicky and Lahela.
Yes. When I see these people dance the song, as a musician, it's literally, I will share from my point of view, it's almost hard not to become emotional. Because it's almost impossible to describe, but there's a different connection from the floor to their hands. When they dance the line "Auhea Wailea no Oe." Just that line in and of itself. In all the lines in Hawaiian poetry, in Lililehua, that line in and of itself, I almost have to block out what it's saying, because I find myself, I can become emotional just from that line. The meaning behind that, for those of you that aren't familiar with Auhea Wailea no Oe, is literally, it's like, where are you? But the more intended thought of it is, it's a call saying, wherever you are,
Pay attention.
Wherever you are, this is for you. And my favorite part of that line is the meaning stayed the same even after Auntie Mikey passed away. So that's where every time I sing the song, and anytime I see like Auntie Mapu them dance it, or any of her students, I think that's maybe what it is. There's that connection that we all understand when we sing that line, and when they dance that line, there's an energy that we're calling to. And we are saying, wherever you are, I got goosebumps all over my arm. Wherever you are, whatever realm you are in, whatever your spiritual beliefs may be, wherever you are, we're calling to you, and this is for you. Give us a minute, to express our love for you. And I don't know if go ahead.
No. I just wanted to mention that the ha'ina mai kapuana e kapua lililehua. Uncle K wrote it as e kapua lililehua because he's talking to Auntie. And then after she passed away, he changed it to no kapua lililehua because she wasn't there for him to see. So he was saying it's for her.
Yeah. And I remember when he made that transition, right? And I just imagine, even then, knowing that it was E Kapua Lililehua and changed to No Kapua Lililehua. One is present in front of you. One is like the Auhea Waleana Oi, wherever you are. Even that, there's an emotion in that as well. And I imagine the first time that he had to sing No Kapua Lililehua, or when people, those who are close to Auntie Mikey, had to change that. And because he told people, I know he told my dad them, from now on, you have to sing No Kapua Lililehua. It's not E anymore. And that's, that song in and of itself is one that I feel is so beautiful. The idea of the hilo pavalu, that 8-strand braid. I heard something, I forget if it was Robert sharing something like Auntie Mikey would do her hair, or would have like the braid in her hair when she would sleep, or something like that. She would put a hilo pavalu. I forget I think it was Robert who was sharing something like about that. Do you know what I'm talking about? So the other thing that I love about that reference, and this is once again, this is my, like Kihei would say, this is ka'uike, this is my thoughts. But when I hear that hilo pavalu, that 8-strand braid, as someone who is familiar with them, one of the things that I felt bound their love together was their love for our island home. And so when I hear hilo pavalu, I also hear it's like from Niihau to Hawaii Island. These are this 8 strands. We are tied together with, with these 8 strands, through our connection to our home, So, I mean, I share once again, that was me. That's something that I hear. And I'm like, wow, that's, maybe he didn't, maybe it wasn't intentional, but, sometimes, things are expressed and there's a spirituality in composition that maybe we don't always understand. I don't know, but I love that line. I just wanted to ask a couple questions about Auntie Mikey. And this is something I've done, just so you know. I'm very interested in this. This is like first person sources. So I'll share an example where I did this. I remember, or just a couple of years ago with my grandma, I went to the graves. I took my grandma and I took my kids, and we went to the graves of all my ancestors who I didn't meet that she knew. And I recorded my grandma, and she talked about each one of them at the grave, at their grave, and she spoke about them and what they were like and their attributes, because, we can read about Auntie Mikey in, if we do research. But I'm interested in also like the person. So, for example, I asked my grandma one time, I said, oh, if you had to describe my grandpa's voice, how would you have described it? Because it's not just about the facts of their life, but when I meet my grandpa one day after this life, like I want to know what I'm listening for. Yeah. So like, so you say, oh, he smoked a lot. In fact, his fingers were stained yellow. And so his voice sounded, he kind of had a gruff, that smokers, the ahe ahe, that smoking voice. If you had to describe Auntie Mikey's voice, the energy in it, how would you describe it?
She actually had 2 voices.
Okay.
One was her teaching voice, and it was very smiley, and she just loved hula and everything about it. When she danced, she came alive. All of her worries, whatever they were, did not exist. And her voice, her presence filled the entire room. whether you came into the room that she was in or she came into the room where you were in, as soon as you walked in or she walked in, boom, the whole place lit up. That was her teaching voice. And kind of like this, kind of like a soft, kind of lilty voice, kind of rhythmical. But when she had a point to make, then she was very direct, but kind. Well, you know, sweetheart. And then she'd go on and give you her lesson.
Yeah, and I love that you said smiley, because I've talked to my students about this, that the shape of your mouth you can actually hear in so like in singing, right? We have our the way that we shape our mouth will change the tone of our voice. So if I sing a song with a smile, it's brighter. It'll be ah versus ah, you know. So, you know, even just the fact that you say she had, you know, it was very happy and kind of a smiley voice. It, for my ears, you can hear a smile. I've showed my students in the past where when I recorded the song I'll Remember You. Yeah, and in the line, your sweet laughter, mornings after, I smiled. Even though no one's gonna see me, but I smiled when your sweet laughter. And when I pointed out to my students, it's absolutely obvious that I was smiling, because I know subconsciously you can hear a smile. You know, like people, they won't know why that sounds right, but you can hear a smile, you know. So I love that you mentioned that it was this smile, because you can hear it. The voice is brighter when
You
it's
can.
smile.
I tell my students that all the time when I'm trying to get them to smile. In class, I said, okay, I'm going to close my eyes and I'm going to tell you if you're smiling or not. You can hear it. It's a whole day. And the energy in the room is different when you're
Right.
smiling and when you're not.
Yay! Finally, someone who that I have this on recording. Someone who stamped my idea that you can hear a smile.
You can.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, her personality. I know you said loving, fun, and the reason I'm asking these things is because we are going to learn Lililehua, right? And I want my students to know this Lililehua, you know, as they're singing about this person that we are going to call to with the song. You know, I want them, more than just what the lyrics are about. This is kind of my thought with having you talk to them, is like I want to foster and build this aloha for this person with whom the song was or for whom the song was written for. So if you can share a little bit about her personality or any story that might stand out with Auntie Mikey.
I think for me, I identified with her very easily because she reminded me of my tutu, where she is intuitive, intelligent, and that where you really just have to listen and pay attention to get all the details of their mannerisms and the teaching without the speaking. You could see a lot of depth in her if you wanted to see it, but you could miss it all if you didn't pay attention.
I love that.
Yeah. And you know, Auntie never turned away any students. It didn't matter whether they could pay or not. It didn't matter what country they came from, how good their English was or wasn't. If you wanted to learn hula, she wanted to teach you.
Which wasn't, now we think of that as kind of common, but
Yes.
was that common in the day?
No, it was not.
She was kind of breaking ground in that, correct?
She was breaking ground, very much so, in so many areas. And her, what she really thrived on was pageantry. She loved a good performance, and she was always thinking about costuming and staging and themes and what the next event was going to be. And in fact, when I was there, when Aloha Week was in September, Auntie would take one night every year and put on one of those free concerts. So Aloha Week was a whole week in on Oahu, and every night there'd be a different concert at the Waikiki Shell. And Auntie would always be in charge of one of those nights, and she knew all the musicians, and she would bring them all in, and she would create a theme and create this fabulous show. And I was fortunate I got to dance in one of them in 1976 when I was hapai with Kahikina. So that was her. She was floats, Aloha Week floats, always. We'd all go up to the mountain. She said, okay, we're going mountains, everybody come, everybody show up. We go with her, we'd follow her anywhere. She's one of those people you'd follow anywhere. You wouldn't ask her where we're going, why we're doing it, nothing. If she said we're going and you were free, you would be there, because you always know it's going to be fun. Always fun. It'll be fun. You're going to learn something. You're going to meet people you didn't know before. You're going to go to places that you wouldn't be able to go to otherwise. And there was never a lack of growth when you're around her. You're always growing.
Yeah, I love. See, so this is kind of me geeking out, but with all of my genealogy things that I do with my family, like this is the type of stuff that I am most fascinated with. Some people are very into the dates, like where were they, when were they born, when did they die, where are they buried? And I'm interested in those things, but like I'm very interested in the things in between those dates, like the stories, the things that happened, the interactions, the personality.
Let me tell you one more story, and then
Okay.
Kihei might have some. He's got stories
Great.
himself about my kumu. So that was like the Awana side, the showy side of her. And then when we were training in our class, in our Kahiko class, she puts on a different, she has a different presence, because it's really serious and very challenging. And you had to pay attention to every little detail. So class was on Fridays. It started at 7 every Friday, and you had to be in the classroom before 7, because once she closed the door, it wouldn't open. And if you missed it, you'd miss class. You can stand outside and you can chant and hope she opens the door, but more often than not, she didn't. And we were supposed to be done at 9 o'clock. And the earliest I think we were ever done was 11. And sometimes as late as 2 in the morning. And my very loyal husband would be waiting in the parking lot at 8:45 every Friday night until that door opened and we came out.
Oh gosh, I love that. See, that's a wonderful anecdotal story. Go ahead, Kie.
It was a duck.
Yep, go ahead.
You couldn't be mad at her. You could not be mad at her. You sit in the car and stew for 3 hours, but if Auntie Mikey popped her face out the door, you couldn't be mad at her. You were just like, boom, okay. Hi. you could not hold a grudge against that woman. The other thing that I remember is she had a garden party, Mapu, what was that called? Close to the time of her death. And I was just the weird husband, boyfriend, whatever I was at the time. Husband, weird. What is she doing with this guy? Right? Because that was my, geeky you, geeky me. We went to her house and she comes out and the place is packed with all of her friends and musicians and students and glorious, famous people. And she comes out and she greets me like I am the only person that she's concerned with, and she wants to make me feel welcome. And that whole kipa is something that only a few Hawaiians manage to hang on to. The other person that I think of automatically is Oz Stender. That just immediately gracious, immediately welcome, warm. You're the one that was my impression of Auntie Mikey. The other thing, the last thing, there was always in her eyes the verge of tears. There was always tears just about to happen in her eyes, either joy or sorrow. But that's how close to the surface her emotions were. And she could be talking and crying, or I had very little personal contact with her, but the times that I was in her presence were impossible not to remember,
Just love her.
impossible not to have an opinion of her. She was that larger than, I guess larger than life is one way to describe it. But the fact that she was so close always, to me, to joy and grief is really evident.
I love it. I love it. And Auntie Mapu, anything else you want to add about Pua Lililehua or Auntie Mikey in general? Just anything that you would want these students who are singing this song, learning this song, both of you, to know?
I would say just know that she would be so happy to hear you singing that song. She would be so happy that people love the song as much as she did, and that people are remembering her. So if you had not had an opportunity to meet her, imagine somebody like the person we described who is in your life, who you would want to sing to. She always told us that when we danced, that we had to think of who we wanted to dance to and for. You couldn't just dance to the air. You couldn't just dance because we learned the hula. We had to share it and give it to someone. So she would ask you to do that when you sing it, to think of the person you love, one of the people you love dearly, that would make you smile and be happy and feel really close to when you sing her song.
There it is. Anything, Kihei, anything you want to add?
Yeah. I have the opportunity quite often, unexpectedly, but powerfully, to watch Mikey's graduates stand up in the middle of other events, from funerals to celebrations to stand up and dance, either Pua Lililehua or Pua Ahihi. And they are never students of the same class. They're students that are from just the whole wide range of her teaching. All graduates, all so synced into what they learned from her that there's no question when they are dancing, even though they haven't practiced, even though they weren't ever in the same class, even though they don't go to anything to prepare for this stuff, that they can stand up and dance these dances better, way better than anything that you can measure with a score sheet, than anything that you can measure on a Merry Monarch stage. And emotional. When I get to see this stuff, that reminds me what hula is, what teaching is, what the transmission of mele to teacher to dancer ought to be, because you're not looking at whether her finger is in line with the other finger,
Right,
or
right,
whether, the costume is appropriate, or whether Bill Char made the lay, or, anything like that. You're just in awe of some other kind of connection. And that connection is the song, the composer, and the woman who it's for and who taught it. And there's a wire connecting all of those people every time. There's this telephone line, whatever you want to call it. there's this thing that tells me when I watch, okay, don't forget, in spite of everything else that you see, that this is what hula is supposed to be. So that's the way that I respond to this song when danced by those who know it from her, and when sung by those who know the whole thing as well. It recreates, brings it all back, makes it timeless.
Right. And it's funny because that's exactly what you just articulated is how I started. With this song is, there is, and I don't know, like you said, I don't know how to explain it other than the fact that when I play the song with people who learned from Auntie, it's very hard not to get emotional. I almost have to remove myself and just think of sounds, and I can't. If I think of the words at all, it's like, oh my gosh, like I have to be like, hey God, I can't be emotional. Everyone else can be emotional. I got to get through the song, but I completely understand what you just shared, because there's been multiple times where, when we performed the song for her students, and it's like, boom, right there. It's like, oh my gosh, you just see it, you feel it. And it's not in a costume, it's not in a lei, like you said. It's just in the energy and connection to the mele. And I love that. Okay, well, I know that I kept you guys here longer than what you guys agreed to be here for. But I just want to...
Ka'ohao right there.
Yes, there it is. I love it. I know that I kept you guys. I just want to share how much we appreciate you guys coming and sharing with us and allowing us to get so close to the sources. Because to me, this is how we connect this generation of learners to the other generations, is by getting as close to the source, because now we become, each of the students here, when they perform Hanohano Wailea, gets to say, when I met Kihei De SIlva and Mapuana De SIlva, this is what I felt. This is what I learned. This is what I was able to take away. So, and I think that there's going to be connections that would not be necessarily available otherwise without getting close to the source. So I thank you guys for being with us today and agreeing to come. And I know that we all learned a lot beyond just the knowledge of the details, beyond just the details. I think we explained to them the whys in our music, the whys in our hula, the why for what we do, which is something that we don't often get. So I'm going to stop the recording, and I'll